All right, all right. Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome to our ancestors' voices, insights into a radical life. Yes. All right. I am fired up and ready to go. I am so excited. I'm going to jump right into introducing our panelists and giving you a little bit more information about our organization, who we are, and what we are doing to make a difference for the masses of Africans everywhere. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, first up, we have our comrade Jamila Bordon. I am so excited to have Jamila with us. Jamila is actually from the AAPRP as well as the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. And so we're so excited to have Jamila with us. After Jamila, we have Salifu Mack, who is with the Black Alliance for Peace, as well as the All African People's Revolutionary Party and the Low Country Action Committee. And then our third panelist is Ajamu Umi, a longtime organizer with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, as well as organizing on 3 continents and the Caribbean. And I am humbled to be your facilitator for this evening. My name is Shukura Umi. We are so excited to tell you more about the All African People's Revolutionary Party, aka the AAPRP, and our objective is Pan-Africanism. We define Pan-Africanism as achieving one unified socialist Africa, which means that every single country in Africa is operating off of the same economic system. It means Africans get to decide how resources are spent and used and filtered throughout. And so, with that being said, we are interested in making sure that Africans have the ability, the agency to be able to decide how our continent is being ran, which means we are in power. And more importantly, we have the ability to work together collectively to make sure that those resources are no longer being exploited. And then the last thing I want to say is that the All African People's Revolutionary Party has sibling organizations that we work with. So this last bullet that you'll see coming up will highlight how we have connections with organizations in Azania, South Africa. We have connections in Guinea-Bissau. We have chapters all around the world, including in parts of Africa, Canada, Germany, just to name a few. And as I said, we're also in cahoots with different sibling organizations. So we're very pleased to be with you all tonight. I don't want to waste any more time because I'm taking that away from the panelists. And we just want to pick their brains and hear from them about why they decided, to join this organization. And we're going to learn a little bit more about their decisions to do so. Okay. So without further ado, this question is open to any 3 of you. And whoever would like to speak first, just please jump right in. The first question is, I'd like you to describe your ideology and your life before you joined the party. That's the first part of that question. And then the second part is, how did your ideology before the party differ from what it is now?
I'll go.
All
Wow.
right.
I would say the ideology I had overall, it was actually uh, more aligned with Marxism. I started studying anarchism and Marxism around the age of late 14, 15. And I started just digging more into anti-capitalist movements, anti-imperialist movements, but it definitely started with anarchist theory and Marxist theory. And the later I got in, just sort of looking at African liberation movements, I didn't really get that serious into it until honestly I joined the AAPRP. I was actually part of the African Internationalist Organization, so I can't say totally once I joined the AAPRP, but definitely more serious about my study when I joined the AAPRP. So I am very grateful to this organization for leading me to this journey to make sense of every single thing I had studied previously. There's one thing to read things and to study individually, but having a solid political education process where you are with a group of people learning about history, I think I'm so grateful to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. I love that. Thank you, Jamila. That's a beautiful answer. Thank you. Others?
Um, so all right, so before the party, you know how people always ask the question of what radicalized you basically, and like you're expected to give an answer about one particular moment in your life that set everything into motion. That's a question I've had to think about a lot, because I realized that for me and probably most people, it's not one thing or one moment, right? Like it's a series of interactions. So I feel like my journey toward being a Pan-Africanist, and sometimes I'm even more specific, and I'll say like a Pan-African communist or Pan-African socialist, because people want to co-opt Pan-Africanism and shift it away from the definition that it was given at the Fifth Pan-African Congress, which includes socialism. But prior to that moment, I would say I was like a radical liberal, right? Like I was, I had just graduated from high school when Trayvon Martin was killed. And so that was a moment that was very radicalizing for me and all my peers. And so, we followed the kind of liberal path. Like we did the protest, we did like the sit-ins and all these things, but it never led into anything further. I wasn't exposed to anything or anybody that would take me anywhere further. And then I remember I was on Twitter for a long time doing the rad lib thing there, where you just kind of like tweet about being angry about things. This is like Michael Brown, Ferguson. So I'm just like on there 2-3 in the morning, live watching what's happening in Ferguson and just like tweeting my life away. And then that is where I was exposed to Erica Keynes, who is one of our comrades in Hood Communist, and also a member of the Black Alliance for Peace. And Erica was one of the first people I encountered who ever used to say things like, fuck Obama, he did nothing for Black people. She was like one of the first people I ever saw like talking about things that were happening on the African continent or in the Middle East, talking about like this concept called imperialism. And at the time, I wasn't really ready to investigate or interrogate or look into any of those things. I just remember that people used to get very angry with her about the things that she said, and she could never keep her account for more than like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. And so Erica disappeared from Twitter, but we never lost contact. And Erica got involved organizing in the Black Alliance for Peace. So I would get on Facebook and I would see her doing things in the real world that extended beyond social media. So that was kind of my first perspective of seeing a person who organized and like did things. But what brought me to Pan-Africanism as a idea, and well, Nkrumahism to Rayism specifically as an ideology, and to Pan-Africanism and to the party, was during the summer of 2020. The world was on fire again. I was back in my rad lib bag, but this time I had evolved a little bit. I had read a little Marx. I had started to understand socialism, all these things. But I had all these questions about how we were supposed to do this with these Europeans. Like, how is this supposed to work? And I just remember every day I was going outside and I was protesting. I wasn't in no kind of organization. And every night I was coming back tired, exhausted, and I would fall asleep watching into listening to Kwame Ture lectures. And so I feel like after I had ran through everything that there was on YouTube, I started to actually just engage with him. I started reading. I started engaging with other Pan-Africanists. I was listening to William Reed and Walter Rodney, listening to Kwame Nkrumah. That led me to my first organization. And then I eventually decided to become a member of BAP. And then I got invited to join the Hood Communist Collective. And as I was researching that invitation, I wanted to see who, these people were that I would be a part of with. And that is where I got exposed to Anya Sonwu. And I remember AAPRP New Mexico has their they have like this 101 series on YouTube, like what is colonialism? What is imperialism? What is revolution? And how do we build one? There's this video where Onya goes step by step, and she's talking about this process as is referenced in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, and it's making so much sense to me. And I'm like, why has nobody ever laid this out in front of me before? And so I became obsessed with Onya Sanwoo, and I started reading everything that the party was putting out. I started watching all the videos, everything that was on YouTube, and then it clicked on me. If you love and like appreciate Kwame Ture and his perspective, why wouldn't you be a part of his party? So I was like, let me go to AAPRPinternational.org and get myself in orientation. And that's how I got to the party.
Yes. Thank you to both of you. I sure appreciate that. I am going to keep the questions going, and I know my dad will mute when he is ready to share his thoughts on the question. So, Salifu, you already answered the second question of when did you first decide to join the party and what drove that decision. Jamila, I just wanted to give you a moment if you wanted to add anything further to that. I know that question kind of leads past this first one, but if you had any other thoughts.
Yes, so it was Ajamu who actually recruited me to the AAPRP. We were doing a lot of work with house security, community defense stuff as part of a coalition. And Ajamu would consistently talk about the AAPRP. I was slightly familiar with the AAPRP. However, as I mentioned, was in another organization, another African-led organization. But I was the only person in Oregon who was part of this organization. So I felt pretty isolated. So here's another person along the lines of where I am developing politically. And he sent a bunch of emails. He said, okay, if you want to go to an orientation, here's where we're going to meet, etc. And we have our work study process. And I just got really interested and said, I'm in. So how I said I was in, we went to an African Liberation Day event. I went with Ajamu to this African Liberation Day event. And as we're sitting there, I said, I'm joining the AAPRP. So that's how it happened.
Wow, your story sounds very similar to my dad's story. If memory serves me, he signed up the same day he went to his first event too. So that's crazy. That's amazing. I love this. This is really helpful to get this context too. Very helpful. Awesome. Okay. All right. So next question, you all, and I know I'm moving kind of fast, but I'm trying to get through our baseline questions so we can open it up to the audience too. So how long have you been affiliated with the party? And if you could just give us 2 nuggets or 2 lessons that you have picked up along the way, what are they?
I can chime in. So I really enjoyed hearing both of you so far. Thank you very much. But I would say the 2 things that I've learned in my years in the APRP, the first thing is that it doesn't matter at all what I think should happen or how fast I think something should happen or what I think people should be doing. That is absolutely 100% irrelevant. What's important is that I try to do my best to work with people in as humanistic a way as possible. And I fail all the time. But that is a lesson that I've come to understand years ago, that it's not about me. It's about all of these conditions that we have to live with out here, number one. And then number 2, I've also learned, and I still really struggle with this one a lot, but I'm learning, I should say, that it's important, at least for me to be effective in the work I do, I have to focus what I'm doing around truth and justice. And I can't worry about if people can't handle that. You know, I can't let that in any way influence the work that I'm doing. And that's really difficult for me, and I'm sure for everyone else, but it's so important. And when I'm able to do it, I can tell like that felt good, that was good. And when I'm not so much able to do it, I can also tell like that was not cool the way that happened. So I would say those are the 2 most important lessons I've learned.
Thank you so much, Daddy. I appreciate that. That's very humbling to hear that. Other thoughts? Oh, and Daddy, how long have you been with the party? That was the other part of that question.
3,000 years. No, I just to kind of backtrack on the other the previous question. So I joined in May 1984 in the first African Liberation Day that the APRP organized here in Sacramento. And just real quick, it was held in a park called the Big Park. Everybody here in the Oak Park neighborhood calls it the Big Park. And before we did African Liberation Day there, the only thing that happened in that park was crime, gang banging, shootings. The city had pretty much abandoned the park. And when we went in there to ask for the permit, they looked at us like we were insane. Like, why would you, who were you? So we went in there and we set up our own stage that we used to keep in the garage in the house Shakur grew up in. And we had it out there. And it was just, I'll just say that night we slept in that park, like it was quite an experience because there was so much going on in that park. But when the event happened, the comrades got up there. I'll never forget, there weren't that many people in the park. It was probably about 50 people in the park. This is 1984 during the Cold War. And the comrade got up there, Brother Macheo Shabaka. I'll never forget it. He was, he's gone on to join the Ancestors now, but he was on stage talking about our comrade Fidel Castro, our comrade Muammar Gaddafi. And back in that time, you all, nobody talked like that publicly. Nobody said that. People were frightened. They would not say that kind of. And when he did that, I said, then I'm with this work. I'm down with this. This is what I need in my life. And I've just been here ever since.
Awesome. Thank you. Our other panelists, how long have you been in the party, and 2 nuggets that you've taken from the party?
Yeah, I've been organizing with the AAPRP since towards the end of 2013. So, and 2 things I've taken with me and continue to take with me, that if you have a solid, humane act of criticism, self-criticism, you do humility right. It's a very humbling experience to have a humane criticism process as opposed to a reactionary criticism process. The other thing that I continue to take with me, every step in life, organization really does decide everything. So those are 2 things that I'm taking with me to this day.
Jamila coming with the nuggets tonight. Okay.
Yep. So me and my comrades, Michael and Kahela, we hit 1 year on the 12th of this month. So baby teens, but we coming. I would say in that year being in the party, the two things that I've learned. The first thing is the importance of keeping Africa central and keeping Africa primary. When things happen in the world now, I don't look at maps the same. I don't digest current events the same, regardless of whether they are directly involving African people or not. I find a way to tie everything back to Africa. And I find that keeps me consistent and sharp, but also people respect, I think, when you are consistent about the things that you talk about and the things that you advocate for. And keeping Africa sort of center and primary, I think, has demonstrated to a lot of people in my life who've kind of had to adjust to sort of me evolving as a person, developing in the party. At the end of the day, they can disagree with me, but they can't say that I'm not consistent in the thing that I care about. And then the other thing that I've learned from being in the party, and I've also gained this in being in the Black Alliance for Peace, because the party and BAP both have very strong elders, which is something that you don't get as a young person, I feel, when you're trying to be out here, but you're not an organization. Is like the importance of struggle, the importance of like learning how to navigate conflict. I talk about this all the time because I want other people who are this way to hear it. I'm a very conflict avoidant person. Like by nature, I would do everything I can to avoid a conflict or a struggle. And I've spent so much time in spaces now with people who do not operate like that and are constantly showing me why that's not okay. And I've had the opportunities to learn the hard way that when you try to avoid conflict, you try to avoid struggling over things, that always comes back to bite you in the ass. And so just like Jamila was saying, not only learning how to just get in there with conflict, but then also learning how to do it in humane and productive ways. I feel like these are things that you get experience with when you join organizations like the party and you join organizations like the Black Alliance for Peace. So those are two things that I'm very grateful for in this year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we heard about this importance of sticking to your truth. We heard about humanitarianism, and we heard about how it really is important to have a plan in terms of organizing. And we also heard about how, we have to be unafraid to deal with conflict and to figure out how to navigate through those spaces and be uncomfortable dealing with conflict. So thank you, you all. So we have 3 more questions left, and then we're going to open it up to the group. You all are doing an amazing job. Really, really grateful to have you here tonight. So this next question is kind of heavy, but I'm going to ask you if you could try to frame your answer as condensed as possible, just because I want to get through the rest of the questions and then open it up. So describe the impact on the world when Pan-Africanism is achieved and Africa is running as one unified socialist continent. Again, please try to make your answers as short as possible. Thank you.
I would just say it's just the question of how we see ourselves in the world and how the world functions. And right now, it's a difficult question to answer right now because all we know is ourselves being subjugated and looking to other people to decide what happens in our lives. Even though we want to believe that we decided ourselves, we really, we're clearly not the people that are deciding what happens in the world. So I think for Pan-Africanism, what that means is that we have a world where our existence matters, where truly matters, not just a chant, but that we have the power to back it up, to make sure that it matters. We have the power to make sure that people have to deal with us with respect. And that's what it means to me. It has nothing to do with where you live in the world. It has nothing to do with language you speak or what religion you speak. It has everything to do with us as African people having the ability to walk down the street and view ourselves in a totally different way than we view ourselves right now. And everyone else views us in a totally different way than they view us right now, because we have the power to determine our own lives.
Love that. Having power and looking at ourselves differently because the world is forced to look at us differently. Thank you. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I will add to that. I absolutely 1,000,000,000% agree with that. I also think, part of Pan-Africanism is part of that criticism process. We all need to see ourselves as human as well and look at marginalized folks in our communities and see that equilibrium that we do not have under oppressive societies and ideologies like capitalism. So if we do achieve socialism, that doesn't mean patriarchy is going to go away. That doesn't mean all of these other isms are going to go away once we have a process to complete the eradication of those things. So I think that's important as well. And so that does go with what Ajamu was saying in terms of how we see ourselves. I think also how we see ourselves in terms of the resources that are stolen from Africa. I think once we do achieve Pan-Africanism, it will have the ability to decide how those resources are disseminated. I think that's a huge aspect of it economically, in terms of land, and so I think once we think of ourselves globally as Africans, we understand that repatriation doesn't just mean opening a business somewhere and saying, hey, I'm an African in Africa. So we have to see ourselves in terms of where we stand, in terms, are we for the people's class or the anti-people's class? So those are things we need to look at as well in order to achieve Pan-Africanism. In order to achieve Pan-Africanism, we cannot work with the anti-people's class to achieve that. So I wanted to say that as well.
Thank you so much, Jamila. Yeah, a lot of us need to remember to unlearn these capitalistic ways that have been ingrained in us. So when socialism does come, we still need to address oppression, and we can't just start buying Black in Africa, because that's not the answer. Thank you so much. Okay, Salifu, I'm muting now, sorry.
My comrades summed that up quite well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Second to last question. Whew, so excited to ask this one. Who is a revolutionary ancestor that has influenced you, and why did you select that person?
I can answer this one first. Um, I'm definitely a son of Malcolm and a son of Kwame Ture, and I understand that's a pretty direct lineage even between those two people. But the reason why I feel so influenced by those two people in particular is all about evolution, right? Like we meet Kwame Ture back in the early day, like the 50s, 60s in SNCC as a totally, different person. We watched that evolution from Black power to Pan-Africanism. And I feel like there's so much power in just being able to have had the opportunity. Well, I didn't have the personal opportunity, but to have the history to look back on, to see how people evolve and change and struggle with themselves, struggle with the people around them, and ultimately land in this sort of internationalist, Pan-Africanist place. And that's something that I want, even though I feel like even though sometimes I feel like I want to believe that, oh, I'm here, I've arrived, I know that there's still so much that I gotta go through as I continue to live. And so I look at those two as examples of that.
I love that. Thank you, Salifu. Definitely looking at the development of them moving from the African Black power to this Pan-Africanist. With both of them, you see parallels. Thank you so much for that. Other thoughts? Oh, and also the revolutionary humility. I heard you mention that too, Salifu. Thank you.
Yeah, I will add that it wasn't Kwame Ture who inspired me to join the AAPRP. There was a Jamu. He's the one who recruited me. But I will say that Kwame Ture was a major inspiration in that, like El Haj Malik El Shabazz, they spoke very plainly about why organization was crucial to achieve liberation. And people sort of couch it in $50 language or whatever, and it's hard for the masses to understand. But I think that Kwame Ture spoke very plainly. I think the other thing Kwame Ture did was talk about, you don't have to join the AAPRP. He also spoke in terms of we. He didn't say I. So I thought that was very inspiring to me as well, because it's the masses that create change, not individuals. And he encouraged, any African in particular who is working towards our liberation, we will work with. And we may not have the same ideology, but we will work together. And so you don't really see that a lot. Someone's like, well, you think differently than me, so I can't work with you. But he encouraged working together because we have a common goal. Another person I will say, as I did more work in the AAPRP, definitely Mawina Koyate, because she was the one who contributed to establishing the AAWRU, the All African Women's Revolutionary Union, and just understanding the struggle she went through to actually have this reality happen, and to see that we are still faced with a lot because of the issues we have amongst the larger societies. So the work that we do as the AAWRU should always be to honor the work that she did, because we are standing on her shoulders. So those are definitely two people. There's plenty of people, but you asked one, I'm saying two, but those are definitely two people.
Yeah, and I would just say I definitely agree wholeheartedly with both Jamila and Salifu. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Malcolm. And I'm very honored and fortunate to have had the opportunity to do work with Sister Mawina, and a lot of work with her and a lot of work with Kwame Ture. And I've had a chance to meet Assata Shakur in Cuba. So, obviously they've had a very significant impact on me and a whole lot of other people, like you all said. But the one that I really want to highlight is because it's the most unusual one, is Anime Picta Akwash, who was a Mi'kmaq Indigenous woman from Canada. And when I was 13 when she was killed through an FBI plot against indigenous people fighting for their rights in South Dakota. And as a 13-year-old boy, I heard the story on the news and I didn't know anything about anything. But for some reason, it really hit me. It really resonated. And I remember I asked my dad, I said, what happened? Why was this woman killed? And he was like, well, she's trying to do something for her people. And so from that point forward, I tried to find out as much as I could about her. And I spent so much time with it that I started to wonder as a teenager, like, what is driving this? And it wasn't until I went to Ghana for the first time in my 20s that we were staying with an elder woman. And I asked her, like, does that sound unusual? Like, I feel like this woman is a major inspiration to me and I don't know her. I don't know, I've never met her. I don't know what that's about. And she told me, she said, boy, don't you understand? That's a part of your African culture. Like we're a part of a continuum, and we come and we have people who come in our lives that we don't have any idea why they're in our lives, but they're in our lives to influence us, to make our best contribution, to make be the best people we can be. She didn't say it exactly like that, but that's what she said. And I remember she ended it with, boy, I'm gonna have to teach you everything about being African. But from that point forward, I accepted it and embraced it. Like that's my auntie. I don't know her. I don't know her family, but I know that she is a significant reason why I'm here today.
Ashe, big ups, Ashe to the ancestors. Thank you, you all. Woo! If you missed this seminar, you really missed out. Text your friends. It's not too late. Text your friends and tell them to join us. Okay, last question, and then we will open it up to the chat. Why do you believe the party's line about joining an organization? Why do you believe the party's line about joining an organization?
I'll go. And I'm going to repeat, organization decides everything. I repeat this, but I heard it first from Ajamu. We set our alarms to go to our jobs. We organize our time around capitalism every single day of our lives. Why cannot we take time out in our day for our liberation? I say this almost every day in my life. I think it's absolutely true. And part of that is, again, having a work-study process. We can see what's going on in the situation in terms of what's happening in Ukraine right now and all the misinformation that's coming out. If we were to join an organization for our liberation, those things in terms of information would be connected to why it's important for Africans to understand the situation in Ukraine, to understand why the training in Israel goes to train the police in the United States. We would understand why one successful African person does not mean the success of all African people globally. There's things that would connect once we join organizations like the AAPRP. Everything starts to make sense. And there's so many questions that are asked. Why are these things happening to us? Why are the police doing this? Why is there war? Whatever. It starts to make so much sense. This is why organization is important. And to do this work with other people is of utmost importance, is because the masses are the ones who create change. Capitalism tells us individuals are the ones that create change. One man can change society. That's never true. How many times do they emphasize the American Revolution when we go to these schools? Not one person did that themselves, but yet when the masses of colonized people, the masses of oppressed people get together and fight for their liberation, when you have the Haitian Revolution, when we have the revolution in Latin America, when we have any sort of revolution towards Palestinian liberation. Oh my goodness, no. So it's encouraged for us not to understand our liberation. The only way we're really going to understand that is through organized means. There's no other way around it. Absolutely not.
I'll jump right behind you and say that the thing that I've come to understand is that every force that is opposing us, that is killing us, that is abolishing us, is organized. And so I feel like I kind of exist in a time period right now. There's this weird thing happening in the world, some sort of like postmodernist, super anarchist, individualist thing happening that's like all about discouraging people from joining organizations. And I feel like it's programmed a lot of people to believe in this idea of revolution that's going to happen spontaneously, and like we all just going to burn down the plantation, and like that's going to be it. And like there's nothing in history that indicates that that is ever going to work. And if we're thinking about getting free scientifically, then we have to understand that nothing short of like being organized is going to be our way to getting there. And the other thing that I like to add to that is that I noticed that a lot of the sort of anti-organization people take those stances because they have this belief that we should be developing ourselves as individuals so that we can imagine a new world and we're going to walk into liberation and like all these things. But the thing that being an organization does is that you're not just sitting around imagining a new world. You're actively learning and practicing new ways to be in community with each other. You learn how to talk to people better. You learn how to manage time and relationships. All these things are important world building exercises too, right? Because whenever we get free, if we agree we have to do it together and we're not going to do it as individuals, then it would be to our benefit to have those skills, to have been developing those skills all along. And so I think organization is the only way.
Yeah, I could not agree more with both of the comments made by Salifu and Jamila. And the only thing I would add is, one thing, you will never see me on the internet arguing with people. And the reason why you won't see me doing that is 99.9% of the people on there arguing, and they're not in any organization. They never have been, and they have no intention of being in one. And to me, it's disrespectful to me to engage, because they don't even believe enough in what they're talking about to engage in an effort to put it into action, because you can't do it by yourself. We're all going to die. So I don't care how wonderful, talented, smart you are. If you're not working with other people, whatever you think is going to end when you die. So you don't really believe in it if you don't at least have enough energy and commitment to it to ensure that it continues, after you're no longer physically able to do it. So that's why I don't see the point. And just, if you've been in an organization, you can tell the way people talk, whether they're in organization. I say to people all the time, they say stuff to me and I'm like, the first thing they say something, I'm like, what organization are you in? I ain't in order. I already know that. Or they'll usually don't even say that. They're not honest enough. They'll just say, well, it doesn't matter. I'm like, because you ain't in one. That's why, because you wouldn't even talk like that. Like somebody was saying the other day to me, well, when they were talking about the period, when all the hate was directed, still happening, obviously, against our Asian family members. And they were like, well, they never did anything for us. And I said, well, that's spoken by someone who has no organizational experience. Because if you had, I just gotten off a call with the group Asians for Black Lives. I'm like, you don't know it because you're not involved. All you just know your individual life, your slave, the slave master. You don't know anything. So that's why you don't understand that. So why would I waste my time arguing with people like that?
Okay, I just woke up my dog. Sorry, Bisa. All right, so there are questions in the chat. They look great, so I'm just going to jump right in. So Mark would like to know, is there anything or any reason that should prohibit a person, old age, work schedule, etc., from joining an organization? Anyone can take this one.
I want to answer this one, actually. As a person who had a 40+ hour a week job, did jiu-jitsu, did organizing, did all kinds of stuff. You can find time in your day for doing organizing if liberation is important to you. I got hit by a truck. It's been a little over a year now. I was in the hospital doing organizing. So I had a concussion. I could hardly talk. I could hardly text, but I was like, I'm going to join these meetings. I'm going to do whatever I can to be part of this struggle. And it's, even if you are 100 years old, you can invite people to your house. If You're like, well, I don't have the capacity to organize right now. Are you supporting a liberatory organization? Everybody can do something in terms of organizing or supporting an organization. Are you helping financially in some way? Are you at least making food for people who are organizing? Everybody can do something. I am a disabled woman. I am still organizing in AAPRP. I don't think there's anything that can stop you from doing that. There are people with all sorts of disabilities doing work. There are people who have 10 kids doing work. There are people who work 100 hours a week doing work because liberation is important to them. So I don't think that anything is barring people from doing anything that is or is not a priority. Even if you take an hour, 10 minutes out of your day, whatever, if it's important to you, whatever time you have, free time you have, because we're not free in this country, but if you have any sort of free time in your day, you can use it towards organizing for liberation if it's that important to you. So I don't think there's a lot of things barring people, even if they have a minute a day to do it. So that's my response.
Jamila, do you need some flour for that fire over there? Okay, all right. So next question, KD, what is one thing, if you had to choose, about yourself did you have to change in order to do this work? One thing, if you had to choose about yourself, did you have to change in order to do this work?
I won't say that. So I already talked about the conflict avoidance thing, right? But the other thing that I was saying, I wouldn't say that it was about change per se, but it's something that I had to intensify. I feel as though principled, serious Pan-Africanists that are trying to organize our people have like a responsibility to know what we're talking about. And so for me, that meant really starting to take study seriously. With the party, like we have work study sessions that happen on a regular schedule. And this also comes from being a part of the Hood Communist Collective. When things are happening in the world and you open your mouth to start speaking about it, we deal in receipts, we deal in history, we deal in facts. It's not, you can't just be talking to people and lying, making up things, just talking about how you feel. Ajamu tells us all the time, we live in this era where everybody got a truth. There's the truth and there's lies, right? And so I feel like that's something for me that I had to really intensify, is being able to take time out of my day to sit down, read about what's happening, ask people questions where in places where I don't feel strong, engage in that struggle around history and current events, because this is not to say that organizers have to know everything. You also need to be comfortable saying when you don't know things, but knowing what you're talking about is important, and dedicating yourself to study is something that I really had to be serious about.
Ashe,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add, I agree 100%. And I think for me, the answer to that question is, and it's still something I struggle with every single day in my life. And it's that, when I was young, I was bused. And what that was is they took kids from the inner city and they sent us by bus to the European neighborhoods to go to school. And this was in the 1970s. And I had tremendous trauma from that. I'm talking about 4 to 5 times where adult Europeans physically jumped on me, and it created significant anger in my life. And I still struggle with that. So much so that, I just like now, anybody that's the underdog, I'm like pulling for them. And I have to really struggle to, as Salifu said, just make sure I have an analysis attached to it. But that's just the makeup that happens when you have those experiences. Like the media talks about James Harden bad, the basketball player, and I want to root for him to do well. And I'm like, that I don't need to be caught up in that like that. But that's what happens when you have that kind of trauma. So I always have to be conscious of it so I can try to make sure I'm bringing my best self to the situation at all times.
Thank you. Thank y'all so much. Bringing your best self, being aware of truths and lies, and understanding that even if you don't organize yourself, are you making sandwiches? Are you donating money? Thank you all so much for those contributions. Best panel ever. Okay, we have time for one more question. And then Daddy, I just wanted to check to see, does anyone have any questions on Facebook or the other social media platforms? So Erica would like to know, what are some book recommendations that helped you develop your understanding of Pan-Africanism and Cruis Torres, or practical organizing skills? Book recommendations that helped you develop your understanding of Pan-Africanism and Cruis Torreism, or practical organizing skills.
I'm going to say 2 books, Class Struggle in Africa and How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Those are 2 books off the bat. Or The World in Africa, W.B. Du Bois, that's another one. So those are 3.
I'll add, because I was gonna say how Europe underdeveloped Africa. Very, very important book for helping people to understand how we get here, like how we get to this moment, and also sort of the role in the development of the state, and why we keep Africa primary, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand exactly how big Africa is and how essential it is to the overall functioning of the world. But the other thing that I would say is Ajamu's a guide for defense. I read that book when I was first coming into the party, when I was first coming into Hood Communist, and that changed my outlook a lot. That was huge. I had already had weird feelings about the idea of like being an American or African American. I already kind of felt like shaky about that. And then the Ajamu, I think it's like chapter 3 or something like that. He's like, American identity is white supremacy, period. And I was like, you know what? That's right. that is correct. And then I wouldn't shut up about it for like a month. And then another thing that I got out of reading that book is, sometimes I feel like online people see the things that we do as Pan-Africanists as being abstract or like thousands of miles away and only concerned about Africa. But a guide for defense does is talk to you step by step about how to do things that could be implemented immediately in your community, with just 3 people that could begin the process of building the struggle for Africa here right now. And so I feel like that is like very important. And I try to put that in the hands of people who are interested in Pan-Africanism, but may not have a local organization that they can be in that gives them that feeling of like hands-on energy. If it's not there, this book will tell you how to just go do it. So I love that book, and I recommend it to everybody.
And that's so humbling. Thank you very much, comrade. And I would add, so there's obviously we have so many books, right? But I would say Malcolm X Speaks, The Final Speeches of Malcolm X, Assata by Assata Shakur. Those 3 books always remind me how important it is to take what's happening in the world and break it down in everyday language that people can try to identify with based on their everyday lives. I would say Sekou Touré's Strategy and Tactics of the African Revolution is, to me, like my favorite book, because his analysis, the history of class struggle, has done more than anything else to help me understand why the world is the way it is. So I just really sincerely appreciate that. I would say Frantz Fanon's Black Skin, White Masks and Steve Biko's I Write What I Like are 2 books that really help me understand that there's nothing wrong with me and us. Like this, we've been subjugated. That's why we have the problems that we have. And we have every right to take whatever steps we deem appropriate to solve this dilemma. And then I would also just add last, the Mary Crow Dog's book, Lakota Woman, was also very inspirational in terms of like really bringing home the fact that not only is this indigenous people's land, but they are still in 2022 fighting for their land back. They are not settling for no quote unquote money from the US government. They want their land back. And that book really, when I read it so long ago, it really brought that home for me. And I just really always remember that because of that book. So I would say those, there's many others, but those certainly stand out.
Awesome. 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 Well, the good news is we have some comrades in the chat who are collecting these titles, and there were so many titles who were collected. We weren't able to capture all of them, but that's why we have recordings. All right. Praise to the ancestors for recordings. So make sure you watch this recording if you wanted to catch the rest of those titles. I actually told my dad that I would give him the last 10 minutes, but there was one extra question that I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on. So if you all could just maybe answer this in 30 seconds or less, just whatever comes to your mind and your spirit. The question comes from our comrade Impilo, and Impilo wants to know what keeps you motivated and not getting tired in doing this work. So again, just as quick as you can answer it, that would be great. I wanted to give my dad this time, but I also felt this question was really necessary.
We have five. I only need 5 minutes for the announcements, so we have time.
Awesome. Thank you.
I will say that knowing that we are going to have a better world is what I look forward to and keeps me doing this work every day and looking forward to doing it. Knowing that capitalism is going to end. It may not be in our lifetime, but it is going to end.
Man, I'm constantly motivated when I look around and I see my comrades everywhere across the US doing things, like just trying. Like everything we do, we won't always get it right. It's not always successful at first. But just to see people like taking attempts at trying to do different things, trying to do political education, trying to travel around and teach people self-defense, trying to get books in kids' hands, trying to stop people from getting evicted, trying, like just trying, like just seeing people try. It's just, I don't know, man, is like my favorite thing, trying to get a food program off the ground, because there's so much, I feel like, doubt casted on the ability of Africans, specifically in the US, to like organize, come together and really defeat this beast. But we don't have time for pessimism. When we look at the movements that are happening in the global South, across Latin America, when we look at people trying and rising up in Africa, like there's so many examples being set for us, and we have no right to just lay down and die here. So just seeing people try things is really what keeps me going.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, 100%. The ancestors are my inspiration, 24/7, 365. And Shakura, as you were growing up, we've been fortunate. We've had a chance to walk through the Elmira slave dungeon in Ghana together. We've walked through Gorée Island slave dungeon in Senegal. We've gone to the plantations in Cuba and in Jamaica. We've gone to the plantations in the southern part of this backward country. And we've always, as you know, we've sat and reflected every time, and we've allowed ourselves to be still and feel the energy of our people hundreds of years ago and the fight. And if you listen carefully, you can hear them telling you, keep going, do not give up. Don't let these people tell you there's something wrong with you, keep fighting. So that right there, with that, how am I going to be like, oh, I'm tired today. I can't even go there. Like, I just got to just figure out a way to do what I need to do. And I'll be 60 years old in April. I don't have a single day where I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm like, I am honored to have another day to do this work. I hope I do it as well as it can possibly be done.
Yes, yes. Let's give it up for our panelists, y'all. Give it up, give it up, give it up. Woo! I just feel like playing Kool and the Gang Celebrate, because I just feel like celebrating. This was such a good time. Do we have a good time tonight? Do we have a good time?
I want to say congratulations on your 100th episode.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Ancestors Voices. I think my neighbors are going to call the police. I don't care. Anyways, I just want to thank you all so much. I really thank you for your time. Y'all are amazing. Daddy, I am going to turn it over to you. Really, really took the bar to the next level, y'all. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time tonight.
All right. Thank you all so much. I got to figure out what's going on here. And just want to let you know, in case you didn't, that we are continuing on. We're not stopping at 100 episodes here. We will be here next week, and that's not the slide I want, but we will be here next week. And just want to tell you what's going on as usual, as we always do. We have a program, our 101st episode next week. And it's also March 6th on Sunday, which is the 65th commemoration of the independence of Ghana. So we thought it would be appropriate to have the political legacy of Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, the founder of the Convention People's Party, the founder of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. So next week, please join us, spread the word. Shakur and I are going to be talking about the political legacy of Kwame Nkrumah. You do not want to miss that one. And we want to also tell you that the APRP Forward Ever Shop is up and running. The link is there. Buy you in any of the number of clothing that we have that are designed to help finance our African revolution. Nobody is going to finance our revolution but us. Revlon is not going to do it. Chevrolet is not. McDonald's, there's no money for that because we're not engaging in a struggle that's designed to uplift and uphold their interests. So the only people that are going to do it are us. So support independent revolutionary African organization. Please support independent revolutionary African organization. And we want to ask you to join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Go to aprp-intl.org and join. And you don't want to join the APRP, then you should join the Black Alliance for Peace. They are an outstanding organization. They are on the front lines of all of these issues that are happening today. So you're like, I ain't into that African Revolutionary Party. Well, then join the Black Alliance for Peace. Well, I don't want to join them either. Well, then you should join the Nation of Islam. They're having their Savior's Day as we speak today in Chicago. So join. I don't like them because I eat too much pork. Well, then you should join the Malcolm X grassroots movement. Well, I don't want to join them. Well, you should join the NAACP. Well, I don't want to do that because they ain't strong enough. Well, then you should start the they ain't strong enough. Ain't nobody strong like me organization on your own and recruit other people. Go out in front of a supermarket and say, hey, would you join the Ain't Nobody Strong as Me organization and help me build this organization because ain't nobody strong like us. So you still, as was said in the last hour, there is nothing you can say or do that releases you from the responsibility to be involved in organized struggle for justice and forward progress. So we definitely want to reiterate that. Join some organization working for our people and working for justice. You can go to abetterworld.me and you can donate there. We're still trying to ask for small donations, $5, $10 for our sibling party, the Zimbabwe Movement for Pan-African Socialists. So you can go there and there's information there on how to contribute to that. Plus all these videos, you can go back and see them there. And then as was mentioned multiple times, Salifu, myself, Erica, Onyesamu are the editorial team for the Hood Communist Collective. There are outstanding articles on this site, you all. There's a wonderful article about what's happening in Ukraine. So turn off Mickey Mouse TV, turn off MSNBC and all those clowns on there, turn off Niggardly Williams and all those people trying to act like they're educating you about what's going on, and go get some real information about what's happening in the Baltic states from hoodcommunist.org. It's right there. It's free. You're not paying anything. Please go get some information. Let's stamp out ignorance, please. So go there and do that. We have a number of these political programs that are going on. The Pontula podcast on Mondays, which Comrade Jamila is a part of. Join that. Please support it. The Revolutionary African Women. We had our comrades, I think they've concluded in the Bay Area, their Tuesday night film series, but they went all through February. We have the Forward Ever broadcast. Our comrades in New Mexico are still, they've been going as long, if not longer than this one, with their Thursday news, Pan-African News, Thursdays at noon Mountain Time. So please support that. Please continue to support the book, A Guide for Organized Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. And please wipe out ignorance. We want to thank again our comrade family, Salifu, our comrade family, Jamila. Thank you to my daughter, Shakura. Thank you for all the comrades on here. We see you on here. We see you, Shan Shan. We know you're working for our people. On your song, we don't even have to say, we know what you do every single day. Miko, from our indigenous community, we know what you're doing. We see you. We appreciate you. Keep doing all the work you're doing. Comrade Tiernan, you know the love is unlimited for you and what you do to contribute to humanity. So everybody else, be like all those people I just named. Join some organization working for justice. Forward ever, backwards never, one unified socialist Africa. Capitalism, y'all know it's got to go. Have a great rest of your